Hello everyone, I'm Pastor Bill Harrington. Not too long ago, I wasn't living for God, and my life was quite a bit different. I've had lots of jobs in my lifetime, lots of times where I didn't feel like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, or wasn't feeling fulfilled with the jobs that I had. And I would do a job for a while and then change, because it wasn't meeting what I expected or what I wanted out of life when I was a child. I can remember playing in my backyard with my brother and my sister, and these people came walking down the road, and one of them was dressed up in a dog costume, and they asked us if we wanted to come to church on Sunday. And of course we had never been to church before, didn't really know what it was all about, but one of the people was in a dog costume. So we said yeah, and so that started my initial experience with Gospel Lighthouse Church years ago. And here and there we would come to this church as children and learn a little bit about God here and there. And I went about life as I saw fit, and pretty much strayed completely away from God. I can remember there being points where I felt that I was an atheist. I didn't believe that God existed at all. As my adult years started, I didn't have a whole lot of direction in what I wanted to do in life. There's been points in time where I've worked in stores, worked in restaurants, washed dishes, cooked. There was a small point in time where I was in the military. As I started getting older and had a family to be responsible for and a home to pay for, I started being a little bit more reliable with my job choices, and I started realizing how mundane work can be and how much it can drag you down, and it's, if you're not in the right job, it's not very fun to get up in the morning or get up in the evening. I've had night jobs before, get up and go to work. I can remember times of getting up and going to work where I was just like, I'm not making much money at this. I don't like what I'm doing. This isn't fun anymore. Why am I doing this? How much longer do I have to do this? Is there any place else for me to go? And I can remember a point in time where I saw an opportunity to make money in driving tractor trailers, and there was a large paycheck involved in it. And so I jumped at that opportunity. I don't believe I ever really asked my family what they thought about it. I just jumped at the opportunity to make money. And so I started driving tractor trailers, and those paychecks started coming in, and it was paying all that back debt that we had, and it was providing opportunities for my family to be able to have luxuries and stuff. And several years into driving tractor trailers, I was sitting at home one day. I would come home on Saturdays and I would leave again on Sunday. I was sitting at home on the couch, and my middle daughter was sitting next to me, and she was probably 4 or 5 at the time, and she was calling to her mom, who was busy taking care of things in the house. And I said to my daughter, "What do you need? I'm sitting right here." And she looked right at me and said, "I don't know you. You're never here." And that was a realization for me about what I had done. I had chosen money over time with my family, and my family, though I was given them financial opportunities to have luxuries. I wasn't giving them opportunities to have time with me. And I realized at that moment I was sacrificing my children, my relationship with my wife, for money. So a few months after that happened, I left driving trucks and I started another business. And this one was a remodeling business. And I didn't really have a lot of experience in it. I had a little bit of experience, and started where so many people do, with doing whatever somebody would hire me to do. Eventually I built the business up so that I was doing commercial work. I can remember I was doing work for Sears, the store. I was doing work for doctors and lawyers. I was remodeling houses, remodeling whole houses. I was taking old houses and rehabbing them, and the business was doing great. I had people working for me. I had work lined up 6 months in advance all the time, and money was coming in like crazy. I suddenly realized I was in the same situation I had been in before. I had all this money, and I was spending all my time doing work and all my nights setting up work for the future so that it was always there, doing estimates and bids and lining things up, making sure that the crew was all scheduled for what they were going to be doing and what the next job was. And I wasn't spending time with my family again, and it was starting to hurt my family. And at one point, when my wife finally got through to me what I was doing with giving my time to money instead of to my family, my wife and I started talking about what we were going to do to try to be together as a family more. There was a point in my life where I was coming home from work one day, and I feel like God spoke to my heart. There was a song on the radio, and it was a secular radio station, and the song was about war. But I believe that God changed the words of that song, and what I heard was a song about how lost I was and about God's gospel and the place that I was in life. And suddenly, with tears in my eyes, I realized how much of a mess I had made out of what God had given me, how much I had made a mess out of my life and made a mess out of my family, and let so many people down with things that I could have done differently but didn't have any desire to. And I talked to my wife that night about wanting to go back to church. And so that Sunday, we decided to come here to Gospel Lighthouse Church. I came to this church the first time, and when I walked through those doors, I felt like God was saying, "You're home." It was an overwhelming feeling. I'd never quite felt like that in a place outside of my actual home before. And Pastor Paul was speaking that day, and after service, I said to my wife, "What would you think if I went back to school to be a minister?" And she said to me, "I support you in whatever you do." And then the next Sunday, we came to the same church, Gospel Lighthouse Church, and there was a guest speaker. And after the service was over, the guest speaker was having an altar call, and he had people come up to the altar for prayer. And some friends of my wife came up for prayer, and my wife came up to support him. And after the minister was done praying for the two people, the minister moved over to my wife and started praying for my wife. So I figured it was time to come up and support my wife. And so I come up and stood next to my wife while she was being prayed for. When the minister was done, he went to walk past me and did a double take and looked back at me and said, "You're supposed to be a minister," and then just kept walking to the next person. And my wife and I just stood there with our jaws dropped because we had just been talking about the possibility of me going back to ministry school to be a minister. And so the next week after that, I walked into Pastor Paul's office and sat down and said to him, "I don't know a lot about God. I don't know much about the Bible, but I believe that God's calling me to be a minister and that he wants me to go back to school to get my ministry license." And Pastor Paul had only ever seen me 3 times. And he looked at me and he said, "It's great to hear that God's calling you, but I think we need to build a relationship so that Pastor Paul would know who I was before he just sent me into ministry." So we started building that relationship. 3 years later, I've gone through all my process to be a licensed minister in the Assemblies of God. And looking back through all the jobs that I've had and all the days of saying to myself when I was getting up and getting ready for work in the morning, how many more days do I have to do this? How many more years do I have to do this? And now I get working on things in the church and get working on helping people with things through the ministry. And I look up at the clock and realize that I'm an hour or 2 hours past when it was time for me to leave, but things are just so exciting and lives are changing and things are happening that are unbelievable. And it's exciting to get up and come to work. It's exciting to be a part of what God's doing in this community and in people's lives. And it's not a point of anymore feeling like, how much longer do I have to do this? How much longer do I have to struggle through this? And as I was learning all that stuff, and God was showing me that he wanted me to be in ministry and that he wanted me to be a part of Gospel Lighthouse Church, opportunities started opening up for me to take steps into positions of using those things that God was teaching me. And at the point that I started using the gifts that God had been building in me for years in ways that were helping God's kingdom, helping God's church, helping God's people, helping the community, the fulfillment of what God has been doing throughout my whole life started becoming a realization, and it was amazing. It's not a I have to do this anymore to feed my family. It's a I get to do this for the kingdom of God. I get to do this to help somebody in their moment of need. It's an amazing feeling to get to be God's hands and feet, to get to see God work in somebody's life. There's nothing like it.